Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Next on Metro's Nada Yada Island podcast.
I almost fainted when the 4 new bombshells arrived. 4 free Samsung Galaxy A16 5G phones at Metro.
No way.
And finding out the 4th line is free? Oh, things got heated.
That's wild. Join Metro and get 4 free Samsung 5G phones. Only at Metro.
Plus tax. Bring 4 numbers and an ID and sign up for any Metro Flex plan. Not available currently at T-Mobile or been with Metro in the past 180 days.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
So Ohio State has found its next defensive coordinator and it's heading to the NFL to do so. Matt Patricia, the former longtime New England Patriots defensive coordinator, former Detroit Lions head coach. He hasn't been coaching for about a year now. He was with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023 in a defensive assistant role. This is essentially an analyst role. And now he's headed to Columbus just a few days after taking an interview with Ryan Day. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik. That's Andrew Gillis. Stefan, what do you think of this hire, Ryan Day bringing in Matt Patricia to replace Jim Knowles?
Well, it's a risky move. It's one that's already, received some backlash and maybe would receive some more backlash if Ryan Day wasn't coming off a national championship, right? I think let's start there. He's earned the benefit of the doubt because he just led a team to a national title. He made a good hire at offensive coordinator last year. He's made good hires, throughout his tenure. There's been some shaky hires, but there's, for the most part, been some really good hires made by Ryan Day when he's had to. I think you point to Jim Knowles as probably being maybe the best. And that's all good. And he gets the benefit of the doubt on that side. On the other end, you're hiring someone who, frankly, is not very proven in a role like this. Number one, he hasn't coached a college game since I think 2001 was the last time when he was at Syracuse. I believe he was working on the offensive side of the ball at that point. That doesn't concern me as much. It's what he's done when he hasn't been with the Patriots hasn't been the best, right? His tenure with the Lions as a head coach was not great. He got fired midway through his 3rd season. He kind of worked in these kind of analyst assistant roles. Last one was 2023 with the Eagles, where at the end of the year, he got promoted to defensive play caller, and their defense didn't really improve much. The Eagles have had a very successful 3-year run. If you remember, at the end of the 2023-24 season, they had started really hot and then completely faded off and lost. They were one and done in the playoff, and their defense was a big reason for the lack of success late in that season. And after that, we haven't seen Matt Patricia coach since. Some of our texters, 614-350-3315, have chimed in and noted that, Bill Belichick, who he was an assistant under for a long time with the Patriots, he was a 3-time Super Bowl champ as an assistant. Bill Belichick just got hired in the college game, and he didn't bring Matt Patricia on staff. So there's some intriguing pieces to this of why Ryan Day went this route. It's going to immediately bring some comparisons to Nick Saban. Remember, what would they call it? The Nick Saban, school of coaching rehab or something like that.
School of wayward coaches.
Right. Yeah. It's, coaches that have struggled at various spots, even as head coaches. Think about Lane Kiffin, his struggles as a head coach before he was Alabama's offensive coordinator. Now look at the success that he's had at Ole Miss. Can Ryan Day do stuff like that where he's got, these experienced guys that maybe haven't had the level of success they wanted? Can he bring them in, kind of teach them some things, give them some control at Ohio State, specifically on the defensive side of the ball? I think Patricia's going to be viewed as kind of a head coach of the defense. That's what Day's defensive coordinators usually are. Can that experience kind of lead to some kind of transformation here where we, in a few years look at this and say, all right, Ryan Day did good with this hire? It's going to be interesting, and there's going to be some things for Ryan Day to prove here because I think there's definitely going to be some questions throughout these next few months of why this was the move he decided to make.
Yeah, I think from like a schematic standpoint, the Lions ran, when he was in Detroit, they ran the most cover one of any team in the NFL. So I think what you're going to see, I think, on the field is a lot of single high with Caleb Downs, which, okay, like that makes sense, right? You have a lot of people close to the line of scrimmage. We don't know what that other safety position is going to be like, so it gives you some flexibility there. So I think, a lot of man-to-man, that was kind of what Detroit was known for. Ohio State might have the corners for that. So I think from a schematic standpoint, you can see where this can work. You can see how this can play out. I think why I'm not inspired by it, and I think why a lot of Ohio State fans are not inspired by it, is you are asking someone to do a role that he hasn't really done yet, right? Like Matt Patricia, I would say, has not really proven himself to be a great defensive mind when he's not with Belichick. And I think that might be the biggest knock against him, right? It's not like, hey, he was with Belichick and then he went to another team and then had a great defense there and was outstanding at another spot. And then, then you make the hire and then it's like, okay, well, he just had a flame out in, Detroit, and that's really what he's remembered for, but he's a great defensive mind. Like, there are those people that exist. I think that you're worried about that. And I think, like Stefan mentioned, he hasn't been in the college game for a while. So you're asking somebody to come in to a college game that, I don't know if you guys have heard, it's a little different than it was 20 years ago. So the college game is different. You're asking him to kind of be independent. You mentioned head coach of the defense. He has to be that role. And maybe this doesn't, super matter because you have the best players in the country. You've got certainly the best defensive player in the country. You've got maybe some of the most talented defensive players in the country. But I don't think it's great that you're starting it off by saying, well, he's got the best defensive players in the country, so it might not matter. I don't know if that's the starting point that you want to be at. So I look at this and I see a hire that, maybe it works out and maybe you get a year of Matt Patricia and he's trying to get back to the NFL, maybe two. And, he goes back to the NFL because, that's where his history is. And that's where, he's been for the majority of his career. Maybe that's his goal. We'll find out when we talk to him, obviously. But, I look at this and see a defensive coordinator hire with a ceiling of, okay, maybe they can just be good again because they do have a lot of talent. But I have a lot of questions. And I don't think that this was necessarily the most inspiring hire. And if you were going to make this type of hire where you hire somebody to, hey, we're asking you to step into a role that you haven't really done before or something you need to prove, I would typically, in my opinion, go to the young guy who is stepping into a coordinator role, to the young guy who is kind of taking on a new responsibility. And hey, we think this guy's going to be really good in a few years, not maybe a Matt Patricia type.
I don't get this hire. I don't get it. No one seems to want to give him a job running a defense other than Bill Belichick, who, in case you didn't know, Bill Belichick is currently coaching college football now, and he didn't bring him with him. The only guy who wants to hire him as a defensive coordinator did not bring him in as his defensive coordinator when he went to North Carolina. It didn't go well with the Lions, and I understand the Lions have had their fair share of bad coaches. Obviously, they figured some things out now with their current head coach, but I can't wait till we talk with Ryan Day about this because I don't necessarily get the hire. I'll be continuing to share my thoughts on the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Whenever we talk to Ryan Day next, I'm sure this will be the base of the conversation. I think you're right, Stefan. I don't think if he didn't just win a national title, we'd be having a very different tone to this conversation, but he did. He did just win a national title. So he gets a level of benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is the Saban rehabilitation of coaches school, right? And this is a one-year thing. I don't care about the recruiting aspect of this, which is a rough thing to say about college football, but listen, his last defensive coordinator wasn't here to recruit, he was here to scheme, which is why all the defensive assistant coaches have to be such elite recruiters. That's still true. Tim Walton, Larry Johnson, James Laurinaitis, and Matt Guerrieri at their best have shown they can be very, very elite recruiters. So if you're pairing that with guys who can also develop their talent and you're asking your DC to just be a schemer, I'm all for that. I just don't know if this is the name tag that should have been attached to that for a guy who, again, was out of coaching this past year, was a defensive analyst essentially for the Eagles the year before that, and hasn't really worked as a defensive coordinator since 2017 before he left for the Lions job. And I'm just, why did nobody else want to hire him as a defensive coordinator? And I'm just wondering, was this Ryan Day's first choice? Was it his second choice? How far down the list did he go before he settled on Matt Patricia? And I guess we'll find out the next time we talk with Ryan Day. Again, get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We're going to take a quick break here. If you're watching on YouTube, this will be the end of this, but we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back to talk about something else.
During President's Day savings at the Home Depot, get up to 35% off select appliances. Plus, save up to an extra $450 on select appliances like Whirlpool. Shop the side-by-side fingerprint-resistant stainless steel refrigerator with an indoor can caddy. Or the fingerprint-resistant stainless steel top control dishwasher with 3 5-inch shelves. Make the most of President's Day savings and our lowest prices guaranteed at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. See homedepot.com/price match for details. See store or online for details. Minimum purchase required.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at turbotax.com.
Here on Buckeye Talk. Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that's Andrew Gillis. This is your Thursday pod. We're wrapping up our week of executing the plan to make sure that Stephen wins. It's been a great week. It's been a really great week. It's going to be great to see whether or not we pulled off that plan. We drafted rosters based off the Ryan Day era from 2019 to 2024. We did offense on Tuesday. We did defense on Wednesday. And today is the results based off of what our texter said. Get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We have comments, we have votes. I essentially just asked them to rank each side of the ball. I was really lazy with the survey. I probably should have done it position by position and the entire side of the ball, but we could talk about that still. Let's start with the offensive side. Andrew, I want to start with you. On offense, I have 3 questions. 1, what do you think the strongest group of your offense is and why? What do you think the weakest part of your offense is and why? And where do you think the Texans ranked you and why?
Strongest part, is it too broad to say skill positions in general?
Yes, because that's not a position group.
Okay, so I think it's receivers then. Because I think having Jeremiah 1 and Garrett Wilson 2 is really, really good. I think JK was the best running back of the Ryan Day era, in my opinion. But the other 2 running backs are Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson, so it's like that gap is not significant. I think I saw a couple of texters say this, I had the best quarterback, running back, and number 1 receiver. Like, I think that's true. So it's like I think receiver is really where I kind of shine there, because like Julian Fleming is not the best third receiver, but that's a dude who you can ask to go get 35 catches, and I think you'll be fine. So I think that was probably the strongest part of my team. I think the weakest part of my team is the right side of the offensive line, specifically Tegra Shabola and Josh Fryer. I think, you look at Simmons, Munford, and Whippler, like those are NFL draft picks. Those are solid, NFL level players. And I think I'm okay there. I think that's, especially at left tackle, like I think that's pretty good. Right guard, right tackle, I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence. My guess would be that they placed me second. I think that I got placed second.
From the 574, I'm curious to hear this podcast, and I sent this out as a preview before the podcast came out, because the fact that Andrew has Julian Fleming as a selection is absolutely asinine. That's what they said about your team.
Fair.
I mean, I think people remember the Penn State version of Julian Fleming because it just happened. But
they remember the Ohio State version of him.
Solid, let me get 30 to 35 catches guy who could block really well and was the fine third receiver.
Julian Fleming had 26 catches for 270 yards and 0 touchdowns in 2023. In 2022, he had 34 catches for 533 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, 30 to 35 catches.
Right, so it's not just the Penn State version of him. In 2023, he wasn't really used much either.
Yeah, but he had 14 catches. Like that was really bad. And I think, like at Ohio State, like he was solid in 2022. He had 533 yards.
You had an opportunity there to go, he had 533 yards when he had the quarterback I'm going to have throwing to him. And you missed that opportunity. Because, the point to make there is he didn't have C.J. Stroud 2023 with Kyle McCord. With that being said, from the 9-3-7, those teams are all amazing, honestly. Andrew's team gets the nod as the top team because he got the top quarterback, running back, and wide receiver of the day era. That's just a few comments about Andrew's team. Stefan, same questions to you. What do you think the strongest point of your team is? What do you think the weakest point of your team is? And where do you think they ranked your offense?
I think the strongest point is probably the interior of my offensive line with Seth McLaughlin, Donovan Jackson, and Matthew Jones. I feel like I'm real solid there. And with Petit Frere and Bowen at tackle, I'm not necessarily lacking confidence, but I think the interior is obviously stronger than what I have at tackle. So I think that's probably the strongest part of my offense, although I do think my receiver room is good. I mean, it's essentially the 2024 receiver room. Just swap out Jeremiah for Chris Olave. I think you're still probably feeling pretty good about that room. But I would say the interior of the line is the strongest. The weakest, I would say, is probably running back. And everyone knows how I feel about Quinshon Judd because I think he's an amazing running back, but I don't think he has the explosiveness of a Dobbins or Henderson. I think I definitely got the number 3 running back in that sense. So I would say the interior is of the offensive line is my strongest. Running back is probably where I'm at the weakest, which makes sense. I mean, I took the 3rd running back. So
where do you think they put you?
Probably 2nd. I think you had the strongest with your offensive line. I think you probably got the nod.
I like the conceding that's happening already in this podcast. I think it's interesting that neither one of you said tight end was your weakest spot.
Well, I got Stover. I probably have the best of the tight ends.
Yeah, but the reason I'm saying that is I don't think you would have said it was your strongest spot either. And some of that is because of the team we cover and the way that they use the tight ends here. It can be neat. I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness. It's just kind of what it is. It's a do your job type of position at Ohio State. One texter, I forgot their area code. I apologize for this, but Stefan has figured it out. The chemistry that would be found between Olave and Fields would be fantastic, but also, and Stevens' overall offensive line has the QB protected 95% of the time. And from the 4-0-9, I voted for Stefan as number 1 overall, followed by Steven and then Andrew. I will say Stroud coupled with Garrett Wilson and JJ is absolutely effing filthy. And they said effing, like the vodka. But I don't see much on the offensive line. And we've seen a game where when a team wants to eliminate JJ from the equation, it's important for the 2nd and 3rd to step up. I don't think Fleming showed up enough at Ohio State to warrant a pick, let alone enough to make you think he could perform like the other 2 trios. Fields, Quinshon, and that line, plus the wide receivers, I think that offense becomes unstoppable, more so than any of the other 2. And then one other text, I forgot the area code again, but wow, Andrew absolutely wiped the floor with y'all. Steven's O-line is nice, though. I liked the second half of both of those where it's just like, oh, Stefan and Andrew did wonderful. But Steven, your offensive line is pretty cute.
I think my favorite part of this is we have 2 texts that I'm looking at. Like one is, like, wow, it's Andrew by a country mile. And then like the very next text that we would get from somebody would be, yeah, I have Andrew 3rd because XYZ. Or like, man, Stefan's awful at drafting. And then the next one is, I think Stefan's team is the best. Like just the up-down nature of how people viewed this I thought was really funny.
It's the duality of man. Duality of man. From the 9
Full Metal Jacket, I know what that means.
You said what?
I said I've seen Full Metal Jacket. I know what that means. The duality of man.
Yeah. From the 9-4-1, I voted against Steven because he included Jamison Williams, who transferred to Bama. Understand?
Thank you. Whoever sent that in, thank you.
I acknowledged that when I picked him. That's fine, though. From Sherman in the 937, I picked Steven based on his offensive line alone, but it didn't hurt to have Trey, the best wide receiver trio for Will to throw to. From the 4-1-2, Steven wins. Andrew was out in front but fell to third by constructing a leaky offensive line. I forgot to bring in the area code again. You, Steven Means, are the winner. Although you claim to love the skill players, you won by building a great offensive line. There were plenty of great receivers for 3 teams, and yours is arguably the best. You topped it off by choosing my favorite Buckeye of this era as your running back. I'm talking about Travion Henderson. I will be interested to see how the selections sequenced. From the 6-1-4, I give the nod to Steven's team. Will Howard probably runs third behind CJ and Fields, but he showed this season he can make plays with his arm and feet. Steven's team has a lot of firepower, with the other skill positions manned by Travion Henderson, Marv, JSN, and Jamison Williams. The offensive line is solid. Slight edge to Andrew over Stefan, though. I really like that the CJ, JK, JJ, and Garrett Wilson lineup. That's a lot of J's on your team. JJ, CJ, JK. It's a lot of J's. Luke Farrell is the other skill position manned by. Luke Farrell is an underrated pick at tight end. Offensive line is iffy. Stefan may have gotten the best all-around playmaker with Justin Fields, able to make plays with arm and feet. Receivers are good, but not elite. Do like the offensive line. And then finally, Steven is the winner because of one, his offensive line is so good it could made a Michigan squad that had Aiden Hutchinson and those 2 2024 defensive tackles. We're talking about Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. 2, we just watched Will Howard look like the CFP version of Super Bowl Tom Brady. 3, he arguably has the second best wide receiver and snuck in Jamison Williams, the OSU Jamison, arguably not greater than OSU Julian Fleming, which I think is a debate. When you're talent-wise, I think Jamison is better, but if you're talking about the production, Julian Fleming is better. Number 4, he has the number 1 tight end. I'd rate Stefan second and like the sneaky good Brandon Bowen pick. Andrew, kudos for having the best top 3, but even after watching them help secure a natty, the tandem of Josh Fryer and Tegra Shabola still brings you crashing back down to earth.
Wow, that was strong words there.
Yeah, that one.
Yeesh. I like that text.
I loved it. This isn't going to be a very long pod. Stefan, do you think we accomplished our goal of making sure Steven wins, at least on the offensive side of the ball?
I won't say I accomplished a goal or anything, but I do think Steven won on the offensive side of the ball.
You think I won. Do you think it was a close race, or do you think I boat raced you two?
I think it was pretty close.
Pretty close?
Yeah.
Do you
At
think
least between first and second?
You think it was pretty close between first and second, and then second and third, it was a pretty much a gap?
No, I just mean I think the gap between first and third is probably sizable.
Oh, okay.
You probably boat raced one of us.
Okay. Andrew, is that where you're at with it? Do you think that whoever was in first place boat raced 1 or 2? And maybe a better way to ask that question is, do you think the gap between 1 and 2 is greater than the gap between 2 and 3?
Well, Steven had a little ass-eating grin on his face, so I'm kind of guessing that there's going to be a blowout. And, it's not what I'm hopeful for because Steven's going to be annoying about it. So
just get ahead of it.
Yeah, I saw the little smirk that was on his face. So I think it was a blowout.
Okay. I'm just asking questions here.
Yeah, but that's totally fine.
There's no leading questions. I just want to know what you guys, because before I looked at the results, I thought I was going to win simply because of my offensive line. I feel like at the skill positions, there's just not that much of a difference in overall talent there, because the receivers are there's only one guy in the grand scheme of things on this entire list who 5 years from now when we look back, you go, that's the only non-first rounder. We're going to go, yeah, that makes sense. Even if one of them had to go somewhere else in order to do it, just simply because the room was so crowded. And that guy was the highest rated receiver Ohio State had ever landed at the time that they got him. He just had injuries and whatnot. So this is a pretty talented wide receiver room. Running back, I don't think you can go wrong with J.K., Travion, and Quinshawn. Those are 3 of the best running backs. I'm not going to say that, actually, because Ohio State's running back history is actually pretty solid. So I can't say that. But it's just, if you started ranking modern-day running backs, if you put together the top 50 of college football running backs of the CFP era, all 3 of these guys make the list at some point. And I think they might be north of 25, though that is a discussion for its own route. And then 2 first-round quarterbacks in a national championship winning quarterback who showed you he could do it. There's no wrong pick here. It's just my offensive line has no holes. There's nowhere where you're concerned. So that's why I thought I would win. But I thought I would win close, because I thought it would end up being a battle of what do you value most? Justin Fields being so awesome, JJ, the idea of CJ Stroud throwing to JJ, or the fact that Will Howard was going to have 45 years to find a receiver because no one was going to get past my offensive line. And it was not close.
I knew that grin.
Well, no, I literally just pulled up the results 2 seconds ago. So I didn't know. Stefan, you were last. Your overall score was 2.17. You got 23.6% of the first place votes, 35.4% of the second place votes, and 41% of the third place votes. So you were pretty balanced across the board here. Andrew, you were second. Overall score, 2.1. You got 31.3% of the first place votes. I think that's what put you over the top with Stefan. It was the first place, second place votes. Because you got 27.1% of the second place votes and 41.7% of the third place votes. Which tells me you were either first or third for a lot of people. Which is how you ended up being second.
If you ain't first, you're last.
Because you had dramatically the least amount of second place votes. It was, you're either first or last, literally. This is why I blew you guys out. Overall score was 1.72. So again, like you're right, almost a whole point gap between me and you, Stefan, and then almost a whole half a point between myself and Andrew. I got 45.1% of the first place votes, and I got 37.5% of the second place votes. So I got the most first place and second place votes, while I only got 17.4% of the third place votes. So yes, congratulations, guys. We did it. We're halfway there. We're halfway home to Steven dominating this thing. You shocked, Andrew? Are you shocked by this? Regardless of what my grin says, are you a little shocked by the disparity there?
No, because I saw what the texters said pretty immediately, so I kind of knew for...
We're going to, eliminate...
a little bit.
We're going to remove Andrew from the text server so he can stop his anxiety of reading people's comments. It's nothing for him.
Well, no, look, I'm curious what these people were saying. So I saw the way that it was trending. I saw the winds blowing in a certain direction.
My internet connection just gave out at the perfect time, so I didn't have to listen to all that.
It's okay.
I'm not surprised by results. I thought Steven, with his offensive line, was going to either get first or second place votes, and the results back that up. There was not any part of me that thought Steven had the worst team of the three. And if you're not getting last place votes, you're putting yourself in a good spot to win by a pretty sizable margin. So yeah, I thought where the draft kind of swung and where I don't want to say surprised, but maybe wasn't sure which route Steven was going to go. When he took Paris Johnson instead of taking a running back in the first round, I think that's where things really kind of started to swing, because I was really hoping he was going to fall to me at 3. And I was hoping that I could start building that offensive line a bit. So I thought that was the draft winning pick by Steven.
The second pick in the draft was the draft winning pick. That's value, man.
If you had taken Justin Fields or something there, I mean, you leave the door open for me to take, Paris Johnson. I could have taken, what if I had Paris Johnson and JJ with the 3rd and 4th overall pick? Like that could have changed things quite a bit.
No, you're right. And it made you jump on Donovan Jackson very quickly, maybe earlier than you wanted to, and because of Justin Fields not going to, probably does that. Andrew, if you could do one thing different, what would you do?
That's a good question, because like so I picked Stroud first, and then I went with JJ second. And and it was JJ and Josh Simmons. It's like, all right, I guess I could have went offensive lineman with Simmons, but if I recall correctly, Petit Frere was gone. And like I don't know what my right tackle choices at that point were. I would, like, so I don't know. I felt kind of boxed into a corner because you look at the way that the draft unfolded, it felt like the offensive lineman really went off the board. So it was like I was going to be making, maybe a reach for an offensive lineman. So I don't know. I think I actually did okay. I wish my offensive line was better, but I don't know how I could have done that without sacrificing significant parts of my receiving core or my running back core. And by that, I mean Dobbins.
If I do one thing differently, I don't take DeJuan 5th. The problem is the way the draft worked out, I feel valid. I clearly have the best right tackle of the bunch. So it worked out in my favor. But what I wanted to do once I got Paris is I wanted to put Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle because that's where he played in 2020, and I think he was better at right tackle than he was left tackle. And that would have shared that up. But I also got a little nervous. I wanted to make sure I had a good offensive line. I wanted to make sure I had a good right tackle. And so I just took DeJuan Jones as the big dude, who was great in the run game, solid in the pass game. But I wouldn't have taken him as early as I took him because I think for me to take DeJuan over Jeremiah Smith in that situation. Now, I did with Marvin, so it's fine. But I wonder if I could have swung this in a way where I ended up with Marvin and Jeremiah Smith on the same team.
I'd be curious if we were to redraft, how early the first quarterback would go. Andrew, would you take CJ first overall again if we were to redraft?
I'd probably go Paris, knowing how things played out.
I think I agree. And I think based on some of the texters' responses there, like I think someone had said, yeah, Will Howard isn't CJ or Fields, but like Will Howard shows you can win a national title.
Yeah. I don't know if I wouldn't have taken CJ with the first pick because it is, once you know who your quarterback is, that's how you build it. Right.
And it's also CJ Stroud. Like it's
it's not even that because it's Justin Fields is the Heisman Trophy finalist too, and Will Howard was on that trajectory before they lost to Michigan at least. It's more about I got the quarterback where, as we just saw in 2024, the offense gave him a lot of room to grow because everything else was so surefire, and obviously the offensive line injuries hurt some things. So it's essentially, what if Steven loses Paris Johnson and Josh Myers? Well, I don't know, man. I'll figure it out when I figure that out. Because that's essentially what Will Howard lost this year. He lost his version of that with Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin. But you got CJ Stroud, Andrew, so you had the ability to focus on, let me just maximize his weapons because we saw what that looked like. Because that's what happened when he was the 2 years of the starter. The offensive line was shaky at times, but the weapons were amazing. Stefan, I think a read option pairing with Justin Fields and Quinshon Judkins is dangerous. And also, Justin Fields played with Brandon Bowen, who was pretty stout in 2019. But also, if there are issues with their offensive line, he's got the athleticism to make up for it. He's a 4-3 guy, but also Chris Olave going deep, right? Emeka Egbuka, I think, is a better version of KJ Hill. A much better version, obviously, but I think the reliability in the slot, they both bring that. Emeka is just a more talented receiver. I had to be elite everywhere so that I could bake an environment where once we got on the playoff stage, my quarterback could be elite. And that's what happened in 2024. And that's what my roster is. There's not a flaw in my roster other than maybe my quarterback might make some mistakes and it might take until game 8, 9, and 10 for it to finally click. You guys got quarterbacks where by week 4, they're ready to roll. So I think we all had some missteps in terms of order where we would go with some guys, but I do think the overall of how we ended up building around our quarterbacks made sense for what their skill sets were. And again, we accomplished half of our goal. Steven won. That's what matters most here. So we're going to take a quick break here, and let's see. The job's not finished, though. We just beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl, but the job's not finished. We got to get through Texas, and we got to get through Notre Dame, and we'll get to that when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This President's Day, upgrade the look of your home without breaking your budget. Save up to 50% site-wide on new window treatments at Blinds.com. Blinds.com makes it easy with free virtual consultations on your schedule and samples delivered to your door fast and free. With over 25 million windows covered and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, you can count on Blinds.com to deliver results you'll love. Shop Blinds.com's President's Day mega sale now for up to 50% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis in the Stephen was right, and he's always right. He will always be right until the end of times podcast. No, I'm joking. That's not actually what we're doing here. We are drafting the best players of the Ryan Day era. We did offense on Tuesday. We did defense on Wednesday. And today, it's all about our Texas responses to those things. Stefan, I'll let you go first this time. Strongest point of your defense, and then part of your defense maybe you're most concerned about.
I think both answers are on my defensive line. I think the interior defensive line, I've got the best one, the draft with Devon Hamilton and Tommy Togiai. You're not running the ball against me, at least not on the interior very well. So I feel like both the interior of the offensive line and the interior of the defensive line, I got the best of these drafts. Defensive end, though, is where I lacked. And that's where I ended up just kind of getting the last two guys on the board because I didn't get the top three guys and kind of had to adjust from there. And once I didn't get the top three guys, I was like, all right, I'm just going to draft everywhere else and figure it out at defensive end with Tyreek Smith and Jonathan Cooper, which I don't think is necessarily bad selections, but I don't think it stacks up to the rest of the defensive ends that we got in there. So I feel pretty good about the interior of my defensive line, though, and stopping the run. That's probably my strongest and my weakest point.
Where do you think you finished?
I'm gonna say I finished in last, and let me tell you why.
That's a humble statement.
I genuinely don't think I have the worst defense on here. Like, I will go to bat for that. But Steven sent out and this is not Steven's fault. He's just the one who sent it out. The list of like our rosters, and every defensive depth chart, it starts with defensive end. So I looked at the screenshot and I was like, great. The first thing people see is Tyreek Smith and Jonathan Cooper next to Chase Young and JT Tuimoloau, Zach Sawyer and Zach Harrison. I was like, listen, we've all done it. We read the headline and we don't read the article. I was like, crap. There's going to be people who read the headline and don't read the article. Please promise, texters, you'll go back and get to the part where it says Jeff Okudah. Please tell me you got to the part where it says Lathan Ransom and Pete Warner. Don't tell me you just read the headline. Because I looked at that screenshot and I was like, I'm in trouble here. I was like, can we flip it where we start with like corners and linebackers and safeties, and then at the end we happen to mention defensive ends?
I didn't even really think about that at all.
And it's not like that's how depth charts work. You put defensive end first. Like it's not Steven's fault. But if I were to do the screenshots, I would have maybe been like, you know what? Why don't we ever talk about the corners first?
I'm just trying to think. Because now you pointed it out, and we're going to be doing depth charts. Let me think. Why do we start with the defensive line when we do the line of scrimmage last on offense?
That is true. I just think you know what's funny is like we're going to talk about Ohio State's defense this year, and the first thing you're going to see on the depth chart is Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, and you're going to be like, there might be part of you that's like, can I get to the part where it says Caleb Downs and but
it's just on
Styles.
On offense, Andrew, we start with the skill positions. On defense, we start in the trenches.
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why. Like more teams don't do this. Like when Iowa has their offensive line, they should go left tackle to right tackle, and then they should go tight end, and then they should go running back, and then they should go quarterback and receiver. Like when Ohio State
put
goes,
the quarterback in fine print.
When Ohio State goes, they should go receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end. Like when Notre Dame goes, they should go tight end, offensive line, running back, quarterback, receivers. Like you should just put your best at the top. Why not?
Creating change here on Buckeye Talk.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you don't.
Yeah, Boise State should put running back first and then just go from there. Yeah, just put your best player top of the deck.
Oh, man. From the 7-1-3. For what it's worth, it's harder to pick which is better, meaning all three are good. Plus, it surprised me how many great players are on all three lists. From 2019 and 2023 and 2024 were all really great defenses, but the other 3 years, not so much. All 6 years of the offense were really good, though. It shows me how important the defensive coordinator job is. It is. It's a very important job. Andrew, best part, weakest part, where do you think you finished?
Best part of my defense is I think that I'm really balanced across the board. Like I think when you look at where you would want to poke holes in this, I think there's one position, but like it's not like a position group problem, if that makes sense. Like I think with your guys' teams, it's like you get to like the back end of, you know, the secondary, or you get to the defensive ends, or you get to whatever, and you go, okay, I think I can work with this. Like I think top to bottom in terms of balance, I think my unit's, you know, pretty well situated. Like defensive line, I don't have a Chase Young, but I'm also not looking at my defensive ends going, all right, well, they're clearly the worst. I don't think I'm clearly the worst in many spots. The weakest part, I think, I think too, like with the versatility, like Caleb Downs, Jordan Hancock, Sonny Styles, like having guys that can move around a little bit, like Sonny can blitz, Hancock can play safety, Downs can play in the box, vice versa. Like I think, you know, that is really helpful for me. I think the worst part is, as I think somebody mentioned, that they put me last specifically because of Tough Borland. I think that might be it. But I actually do think the worst part of my defense is there's not a star there. Like Chase Young is on Steven's team. Like, my goodness, like that's unbelievable.
You have Caleb Downs on your team.
Yeah, that's fair. I should say I think your guys' star power is heavier. I'll put it like that.
I don't agree. I don't think the problem is Stefan doesn't have any stars. Jeff Okudah. No, I don't know,
but it's just funny to say it out loud.
Jeff Okudah is a matter of fact star, right? I wouldn't have called him a household. He was just a really good football player.
Chase, he went third overall,
right? I don't know if we were thinking he was going to go third overall when the season started. No one that's not, and also the way his career is played out, like, no one thought he was going to be the second defensive player taken in the NFL draft when the 2019 season started. Nobody thought that. You thought he was going to be an elite cornerback, and maybe he's going to be a first round draft pick. But the third overall draft, do you know how many cornerbacks have been third overall in the past 30 years? That's not a normal thing. Derek Stingley just did it. It was a big deal. Sean Springs was the top. Being a top 5 draft pick as a corner is not easy, even if you are cornerback 1. So that's he's not. I wouldn't call him a star in terms of like what's the biggest play of Jeff Okudah's career here. I'll tell you what it is. It's the Nebraska game when he had the first pick, brought to you by Chase Young's pressure on Adrian Martinez, and then his second interception of that game when he caught it on his back because Jordan Fuller tipped a ball. And I don't want to chip at Jeff Okudah. He's the best cornerback of the Ryan Day era without question. He might be one of the best cornerbacks Ohio State's seen in the last 25 years. But it's just there's not a lot of flash with him the way that there was flash with Marshawn Lattimore and Malik Hooker. Caleb Downs has flash plays. Jack Sawyer has flash plays. He's got the Cotton Bowl. He's got the Michigan interception. He's got the play against Texas. Chase Young. Stefan's team lacks something for fans to just hold on to of a moment that teams remember. I think the loudest moments are probably Sean Wade getting ejected because of a targeting call and Lathan Ransom murdering running backs this year. And it just, they're all matter of fact play. So it's not to take away from Stefan's team. I think in a real game, this is an elite defense. It's just on paper, it's not as shiny as maybe some of the toys that Andrew and I got to play with.
So who's the coach who picked Jeff Okudah third? Just curious.
We're gonna leave that right there too.
Yeah.
Yep, leave it right there.
See, I think I won. I think I won this one.
It's about time if you showed some confidence, man.
I think I won. I think my team is the most well balanced, and I think with I think in the secondary I have like a lot of really solid, and then I've got Caleb Downs like to go on top of that. And then like my defensive line is still really good. Like I think I won this one.
From the 9-3-7, this was harder to decide than the offensive one. Star power everywhere. I put Andrew last because of Tough Borland's lack of speed. From the 4-1-2, gentlemen, it is Andrew in first place by a country mile because 2/3 of the earth is covered by water. Caleb Downs covers the rest. A time-worn remark for sure. In case of Downs, it is apropos. And then from the 7-06, Andrew may have gotten the best of that draft. From the 4-1-9, man, Stefan is bad at drafting.
I feel that. You should see my fantasy team. Not always great.
From the 4-4-0, I ranked Stefan's defense last despite loving his linebacker room and really liking his DB room. These defenses are very even. I think the biggest thing this exercise showed me is how important I think defensive linemen and subsequently defensive line recruiting is for our defense. I'm sure reasonable people disagree, but sheesh. I agree with that. Stefan, Ohio State's defenses have been built around their defensive line, and you did not build around your defensive line. Your interior is very good, but you didn't build around getting after the quarterback with 4. And that's been essentially what Ohio State's defense has been since Larry Johnson got here under the Urban Meyer era of, we got 4 guys up front who will harass you so the rest of us can sit back here in coverage, whether it's playing strictly man and quarters, which is what a lot of the Urban Meyer era was, to cover 3, cover 1, the earliest run day to now you're seeing multiple, right? There are 2 high safety. I mean, we saw 3 high this past season, but a lot of it has been built around the fact that there have been studs on the defensive line who can get home. And you didn't go that route. You went the route of 2021, 2022, when they didn't have defensive linemen who were getting home. And it's fine, but I think it's where you ended up losing this is because your linebackers are awesome, but your linebackers don't have to be awesome for Ohio State's defense to be elite. At least that's not always the case.
Yeah. I think one thing that I found interesting as we kind of did this draft, and I'd be curious to see how much our texters kind of feel this as well. I had the fewest players from the 2024 roster on defense.
Yeah.
Steven, you had 3. Andrew, you had 7, I think, if I'm counting this right. And I only had 2. And I didn't have either of the defensive ends, obviously. I think I haven't yet fully grasped the historical context of what these guys mean yet, right? Like, we talk about Chase Young, and Chase Young, I mean, maybe he's a bad example, but even like Pete Werner, like anytime someone talks about Pete, like people get very excited. They're like, oh man, that dude was legit. I don't think I've grasped, and maybe I won't for a few years, the kind of historical context of what Jack and JT and, you know, I'm looking at like Ty Leak, Ty Hamilton, Sonny Styles, like guys that were taken in this draft, of just how good they were. Because I think maybe we're so fresh off watching them and being like, yeah, these guys are good, but we haven't quite had these conversations of where they rank kind of historically. And I think doing this draft made me realize, like, Jack and JT, as much as we gave them flack at points throughout the season, they are undoubtedly guys that were worthy of being taken early in this draft, right? Like when Andrew took Jack, I thought it was early. And then I'm kind of sitting there at the end of the draft being like, man, I forgot how, like, what Jack means in a historical context, not even just like as a leader, all that stuff that we've talked about in terms of his legacy, but as a player too. Like, I don't think I've yet fully grasped what a lot of these guys mean historically. And that's kind of an interesting thing that happens when a team wins a national title, or even just when a guy finishes his career, right? Like, anytime you talk about someone like we're going to watch Caleb Downs again this season. We watched him all last season, and we're sitting there being like, this guy's the best safety in America. There's no doubt. I mean, where's he going to rank in like all-time safeties? Where's he going to rank in like all-time defensive players at Ohio State when his career comes to an end? That's a conversation we're maybe not ready to have yet, but it's going to be interesting to watch that unfold. Like it's cool when you see it kind of happen in real time. When you see Jack and JT, like, all right, they're done playing now. Now we can start having these historical context conversations where, yes, winning a natty impacts your legacy a ton, but we're also remembering like those dudes were legit on the field, and they were among the best in Ohio State history, at least the Ryan Day era for sure.
Jack and JT have been a victim and a beneficiary of what sports are now in terms of every single snap. Okay, let's evaluate where they sit in the hierarchy of things, right? Like nothing is ever in the moment. It's all about the big picture conversation. And so up until December 21st started, Jack and JT were these two dudes who arrived as the highest rated defensive players Ohio State had ever landed. They were supposed to be the next in line of that Bosa, Chase Young, hierarchy lineage that Larry Johnson had built here. And they were the faces, along with Zach Harrison, because he was also a top recruit coming out of high school. They were the faces of what Ohio State's defensive line had become. And that's, they get pressure, but they don't get home. Because if you look throughout their career, Stefan, they've always had high pressure numbers according to PFF, but they just didn't get home. They didn't get the sacks. So it became a thing of, yeah, you get pressure, but you don't get home. And it's a little bit disappointing. And that's what it had kind of become in this situation. And then December 21st hit. And all of a sudden, they're not just, I get pressure, but I don't get home. They get home. And it has drastically changed the way we view them in their careers, because let's just say they don't win a national title. I don't think they go 5th and 6th. And then, well, they still might, because there's still a drop-off in talent, but you might wait a little bit before you take them. The first defensive lineman that's not named Chase Young maybe doesn't come off the board at 5 and 6. Maybe they come off the board at 11 and 12. But instead, they come off at 5 and 6 because they won a national championship and they finally reached their full potential as Ohio State football players. So I agree with you. Sometimes it is just take a step back and let time go by and let's see what ends up happening. So let me ask you first, where do you think the bigger gap is between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3?
2 and 3. I think Stefan was a pretty clear third on this one.
Okay. And you think that, so you think there was a bit of a close race for the finish?
Yeah, I think the gap between 1 and 2 is closer than 2 and 3 in this one.
Okay. A couple other texts here from Rob in the 301. Steven nailed both offensive line and defensive line. They might give up some big passes if they don't get home, but will cause problems with the pass rush and shutting down the run. Andrew and Stefan game for second best would be good. Good draft, Steven. Thank you, Rob. I keep losing the area codes. At first, I was going to rank Steven first because I saw Chase Young, and he is by far the biggest game changer of the Ryan Day era. But I think it's very equal now that I'm looking at the whole teams. I think I might have to stick with Steven, but Stefan's team, and less so, they put parentheses, Andrew's team, really is making me have a hard time making this decision. And then from the 614, this was a tough call. I gave the slight edge to Andrew over Steven for the best defense. Even though Steven had Chase Young and JT, I liked Andrew's defensive line better. I also like the safeties. Obviously, Downs needs no explanation, and Josh Proctor could really lay the wood to people. Just ask that Wisconsin quarterback who tried to score a touchdown on the last play of the Big Ten championship. I think they are still trying to scrape his remains off the playing field over in Indianapolis. Sonny Styles could be great next season. Iggy and Damon Arnett are a couple of physical corners. Steven's front line is impressive, and the linebackers are solid, but I'm not crazy about the secondary. Stefan has the best linebacker corps, but he gets beat everywhere else. Stefan, you did come in last place. Overall score of 2.38. And you just didn't get any first place votes. You got 13.2% of the first place votes, 36% of the second place votes, and 50.9% of the third place votes. You kind of hit the nail on the coffin there. I just think defensive line is what has been the heart and soul of Ohio State's defense for over a decade. And that's really where you just, especially on your edge, you just don't have anybody who can get after the quarterback. And I think that fans noticed that. I think the Texans noticed that, which is why you finished in last place. Hey, Andrew. You finished second.
Yeah, Buckeye Talk texters were wrong.
2.18 was your overall score. You got 20.2% of the first place votes, 42.1% of the second place votes, and 37.7% of the third place votes.
I'm backing that up with what Stefan said earlier about, I think people saw Chase Young and they went, Steven, boom, lock it in.
Or I just did better than you guys, and we accomplished our mission. Our goal, Ohio State's goals are to beat Michigan, win the Big Ten championship, and win the national championship. That's their goals every year. That's their standard. Our goals are to make sure Steven wins. And you guys allowed that to happen. And you know what validates this for me, Stefan? The fact that I won the defensive side of the ball. The fact that Andrew came on that pod yesterday and went, Steven, you had the easier spot drafting by going second the entire time. So me and him essentially flipped spots because that's how things worked out. And my gap was even bigger on the defensive side. My overall score, 1.45. I got 66.7% of the first place votes, 21.9% of the second place votes, and only 11.4% of the third place votes. I got less third place votes than Stefan. You got first place votes. I dominated this thing. Are you shocked?
I'm not shocked because you got to watch all these guys, most of them. Cherry picking, cheating, lying.
Are you shocked? It's
we
not
need
lying.
We need to change depth charts. It's got to change. If maybe we should have just posted like the order we picked players or something, and people could see that I took Tyreek Smith and Jonathan Cooper. It's not a good look at the top. I understand. I've had a lot of people email me where I'm like, did you read the story or read the headline? I worry that's what happened here.
Andrew, are you shocked?
I'm a little surprised on this one. Like, I'm willing to cede the offense. I mean, I disagree with it a little bit. I'm willing to cede the offense because Steven did have a really good offensive line. But defense, I just think people are wrong. Like, I don't think Steven – I genuinely do not think Steven has the best defense.
Let me tell you why they picked me as the best defense. Because, again, this is pairing. You guys don't have an answer for Chase Young and JT Tuimoloau.
No, but here's the problem. That's what I'm saying. Nobody has an answer. Okay, who's the offensive tackle who has an answer for Chase Young?
Who has the best? Okay, there's having no answer and there's having
maybe Paris Johnson, and even then, I'm not sure.
Paris Johnson.
Chase Young was one of the most dominant college football players I've ever seen.
Paris Johnson didn't give up a sack in his career as a starter, as a left tackle, until literally the last game of the season.
Did he ever play Chase Young in college?
Huh?
Did he ever play Chase Young in college?
I mean, he was 17 when Chase was doing what he was doing. What are you talking about?
There you go.
Right. So Chase Young.
I've seen few defensive ends impact a game like Chase Young. That's my point.
I watched Chase Young.
Yep.
I watched Chase Young not have a single sack against Michigan. I watched Chase Young not have a sack in the Big Ten championship game. I watched Chase Young not have a sack against Trevor Lawrence and Clemson. And that's not to take away from the 16.5 he had going into those games. You're right. He was dominant, but he wasn't. You could figure him out. You could scheme him up because the last three teams he played as a college football player did it. So when you're talking about answers, I have the best answer. You're saying, oh, yeah, Chase Young was awesome. He was the first defensive player taken in his respective draft. Paris Johnson, I might be mistaken, but Paris Johnson, I think, was the first non-quarterback offensive player taken in his draft. So we're not talking about, we're not talking about some scrub here. We're talking about a guy who was also a consensus All-American, who was also a top 10 draft pick, who was also, bar none, the best player at his position. So, yeah, I like my chances. And also, I don't have to go against him because he's on my team so I can worry about it in practice. You guys are going up against Chase Young and JT Tuimoloau with not Ohio State's best two options at tackle. So that helps. So, yes, your receivers are good. But if you can't get the ball to them, then it doesn't matter how good your receivers are. And one of our texters pointed out the fact that we saw a team take away Jeremiah Smith. So what that tells me is if you scheme it up in a way where I take away JJ and I don't let Justin throw it deep, and these guys are getting home, that's how I won. My defensive line has 2 guys on it who are amongst Ohio State's all-time leaders in sacks in a single season. So my secondary is a little shaky, but I think it's good enough to allow Chase Young and JT to do what they do, along with what Mike Hall has. I've got the 3 best pass rushers, pure pass rushers of the Ryan Day era. When you're talking about just overall ability to go get the quarterback, I've got those 3. And again, when it comes back to what has Ohio State built its defense around, it's built its defense around its defensive line. And so when you've got the 3 guys who showed, whether it was late in their career or their entire career, that they can get after the quarterback, that's what's going to weigh more than everything else. There's a reason why guys who get sacks go so early in the NFL draft. So, yeah, I'm not that shocked by this.
I'm not surprised at these results. I gotta say, I don't know if this was separated, Andrew and Stephen, between first place and second place, but Andrew had on offense Julian Fleming, Tegra Shabola, and on defense had Davis and Igbinosun. Those are 3 names that people quickly read. And whether, listen, do I think it's fair to look at the offense and say, oh, Tegra and Julian Fleming are on there, that automatically makes it second place? No, it's probably not fair. But those are 3 trigger names to Ohio State fans that might have quickly lost you.
It is when you're trying to differentiate here.
So you're saying I should have pandered?
No. I mean, yes. But
no, and right as Stefan said yes.
I mean, yes.
They both immediately went yes.
What I am saying is, I think Andrew's roster lives on both extremes. You have guys who are extremely, oh no, what are we going to do to stop this guy? But then you have guys who are like, oh no, this guy is how we stop this guy. You have guys who can stop your own team on your team, which is what really 20, 21, and 22 were for Ohio State. Elite talent, but also some guys who probably shouldn't have been on the field. So who was going to stop Ohio State? Ohio State. And they did. They constantly got in their own way. And that's what Andrew's team looks like. Jeremiah Smith, J.K. Dobbins, C.J. Stroud, Garrett Wilson. There's no answer for that, as the entire college football world found out. Unless Josh Fryer and Tegra Shabola completely ruin your passing game because they can't, hold up in pass coverage. We've talked about it, Andrew. Josh Fryer didn't give up a lot of sacks, but when he did, they were loud and at the worst possible times. That's all I got to bank on with Chase Young. Getting home on a 3rd and 6, where you absolutely, Andrew, for the sake of where the game is, the game's hanging in the balance, you need to convert this 3rd down. Well, Chase Young needs to sack more, so he's going to go get that. On defense, solid defense. I think you have a defense that's very much a bend but don't break. And Caleb Downs can make some plays. Josh Proctor can make some plays. Sonny Styles is a little iffy in coverage. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to put Travion Henderson on a wheel route on Sonny Styles. Good luck. And then Davidson Igbinosun and David Arnett can get handsy. So it's a elite roster on one end, but on the other end of the spectrum, it's very, I see how you lose. And with Stefan, I just don't think you have enough star power on both sides of the ball to, if it turns into a high-scoring game, I'm not sure what you do about that, because you're not going to get this. I don't think you can get the necessary stops. You are banking on, for me, my team's not perfect. It's not perfect whatsoever. My offense, I think, is pretty perfect. But defensively, if you can get after my corners, it might be a rough day. But that requires you to also get the ball off. I think I've mitigated my problems while also highlighting my strengths maybe better than you two. And I think that's why I ended up winning in such a gap of a fashion. I thought my defensive draft was better than my offensive draft. And I thought my offense was pretty complete. But the point is, you guys should feel proud, because we did what we came here to do today. And let's make sure Steven wins. We'll do this again at some point, and maybe you guys will do a better draft. But it's a learning experience. That's all Steven, it is.
Now that you're a champion, do I get a co-offensive coordinator? Do I get promoted?
Listen,
how it works, right?
Yeah, you guys get coordinator bumps for sure.
And a raise. The Raiders are offering me $6 million right now to come help them draft.
I mean, listen,
I don't know. It actually probably would help them. I'm not a good drafter, but I could probably help the Raiders with some of their draft.
Yeah, I'll give you. How about this? The title bump with no actual responsibilities.
That's fine. Do I get paid more?
Yeah, you get a little bit more.
And less responsibilities, more money.
I need you to just give me a reason to give you it, though, because I got to sell it to the board of trustees. I can't just give it to you. So you got to go find the offer so I can bring it back.
Yeah, $6 million Raiders.
All right, deal. I don't know about those $6 million, but we'll figure it out. We'll find somewhere in the middle to get to. Congratulations, guys. I am the champion, and you guys made it happen. You guys are successful in that bout. Get the text 614-350-3315, and we'll continue to talk about Ohio State's recent defensive coordinator hire on podcasts in the future as well. I know we touched on it at the beginning of this pod, but the crux of this pod was about making Stephen a winner, and we did that. And now we can put the bookend on this, and when we come back from this small break we're going to take as we try to rehash here, we'll get into NFL draft talk. Stefan and I have some tier stuff we want to do on the Monday pod. We haven't done a recruiting pod in a while, so we're probably due for that as well. So get to text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 for that, for Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. I am a winner, and that was Buckeye Talk.